My question for you is how individuals can prevent this happening. How can we have of course, part of that uh, equation is reading more Tangle news, but how can we prevent that? And on the other hand, how can we unplug that addiction that we have to those sensationalist media? Because it's not only their fault. We are hooked into it.
Yeah, I would say there are a couple pieces of advice I give people. The first one is every click that you make on the internet, on your phone, on Instagram, anytime you open a web browser, you should think about that click as giving $1 to something, to somebody. Any news organization that you click on, you see a headline about a bus crash that kills a bunch of kids, and you click on that article. In your mind, you should think, I just gave this news organization $1, because you did. They are going to profit from you coming in and reading that piece of news. And when you think about that, the sort of extension of that is this the kind of content I want to reward with my eyeballs and my dollars? Is this the stuff that I want to pay for? Even if it's not coming directly out of my bank account, is this the kind of content I want to signal that I like, that I want more of, and that this media company should make more of? Because that's the signal you're sending. I remember in 2016, I had a lot of friends who used to say, I hate how much the media covers Donald Trump. Why do you guys cover Donald Trump so much? I want to read about anything else that is not Donald Trump. And I said, if you go to the New York Times homepage right now, there's going to be 5 stories about Donald Trump, and there will be 2 stories about a healthcare bill that just passed. And if you go to that homepage and you click the Donald Trump story, they're going to publish more stories about Donald Trump, because they see that. They see how much interest there is, how many people want to do that. And so they're driven to do that. So think of your own role and your own responsibility in it. I think that's big. That's number one. Second thing is what I mentioned earlier, which is you should pay for your news, subscribe to news outlets you like, because supporting them in ways that they don't have to rely on advertisers or investors is a really healthy way to support their business. And then the third thing I would say is think about the last time you changed your mind about an issue, about a political issue. And if you have a hard time thinking of the last time that happened, then the reason why is because you're inundating yourself with news that just confirms your worldview, that confirms your perspectives. So seek out things that challenge you. If you're a liberal, go read Fox News. Just try it. Just see it to get a different perspective. Read the New York Post. And same thing, if you're a conservative, go read some New York Times or go read Vox or go read the Huffington Post, because you want to get a little bit of that left of center perspective and have your views challenged a bit. And I think if you're operating in a space where you don't get your views challenged very often, then you are really just addicted to the kind of content and the kind of narratives that confirm all your prior beliefs. That's my opinion. Of course, reading Tangle is a great way to fight that, but I created Tangle because I wanted this to exist in the media space, because I didn't see it existing anywhere else. I wanted people to be able to go to one spot to get this really wide range of perspectives, because right now the reality is a lot of people are just living in these little silos where they're only learning and hearing and reading things that confirm their priors. And I think that's really, really dangerous.
How have you been able to, of course, you had that realization that news was becoming sensationalist and the incentives were being tailor-made for money, for profit making, but the news industry is very hard, especially when people are hooked into confirming their own biases. And so my question here is twofold, Isaac. How have you been able yourself to identify, the articles that are sensationalist besides Tangle? Like, what kind of headlines should us be in the lookout for? And the other one, within your own articles and within your own staff, how have you been able to create this balanced perspective, one which also challenges the author's perspective while they write it?
Great question. First of all, in terms of spotting sensational news, I would say if I read an article that is about, say, the immigration crisis on the border, if I'm reading something in the New York Times about that, the first thing I'll go do when I'm done the article is go try and read about the exact same story reported by a different outlet that maybe has a more conservative right-wing perspective. And if I see this huge gap between the way that they wrote about it and the facts they use and the quotes they have and the way the narrative goes, then I know somebody on one of these sides is sort of bending the truth or being a little sensational. And then I keep digging in. If I see that the stories are really kind of similar, but maybe there's some small language choices, then I think, okay, they're both putting their little twist on this. But generally speaking, the facts here have been pretty well established, and both, different narratives are kind of running along the same road, and we can sort of understand it this way. That's one thing I like to do, just to see if I can smoke out some of the kind of sensationalism. If I see a headline that says one thing and then I click into the article and I read it and I don't think the article supports the headline, then I think, okay, this seems a little sensational. I was a little misled. Maybe the social media post is misleading, and I click in and it's actually not quite as bad as what it said. And I remember, all right, this media organization does this. They have some misleading headlines. They have some sensational headlines or social media posts. With Tangle, it's a little different because what we do is we pull together perspectives from all across the political spectrum on any given issue. So the biggest thing for me is I have to go into that with humility that I don't know the truth. I don't know what's right. I'm not the person who gets to decide the right or wrong perspective. What I'm trying to do is collect a really diverse range of opinions, put them all in one place, make them accessible for our readership, let them read through the decisions, and then they can decide which ones are the most convincing to them. I get to share my own opinion. I have a little My Take section in every newsletter and podcast where I say explicitly what my views are. And I do that as an act of transparency. I think it's important for people to know what someone like me thinks because I'm the person supplying the information to them, and they can use that as context for everything else. But the biggest thing is we believe fundamentally that these debates should be happening openly, fairly, with equal space to different groups. And when people see the arguments lined up next to each other, they can decide whether one side is being rational or not, or one position makes sense or resonates for them or, represents their own views or not. And what we found through our work is this makes people a lot more open-minded. It makes them a lot more curious. It makes their positions a lot more nuanced. They become less attached to their political identity. They become a lot more willing to say things like, this actually changed my mind, or this is the first time I disagree with the Democratic Party about something, et cetera. And so I've seen and have the personal testimony of tens of thousands of readers who actually have their minds change and have the way they think about these issues change and become more nuanced when they actually see a really good representation of the other side's arguments.